on this new session of Agtalks by AgriERP, where we are today interviewing Jacqueline from Herdbook Ag Media, and she'll be sharing her experience with us and how she has been bridging the gap between industry professionals and consumers. And yeah, we'll be just having a conversation around innovations, challenges, and some stories shaping the future of agriculture. Jacqueline, welcome to the show, and it's a pleasure to have you. I think let's get started with some introduction from you, what you have been up to, and your experience so far in the industry.
Yeah, thanks so much. My name is Jacqueline Dicandio. I have been involved in the agriculture media space for about 7 years now. I first got started towards the end of college when I was doing some work for a dairy cattle trade media magazine. After that, my first job was more on the corporate side of agriculture communications. And then in 2020, so 5 years ago now, I decided to go full-time with freelancing. At that time, I had only been doing it part-time, just a little bit on the side, still focused on agriculture. And then when I decided to go full-time, I focused more on offering media and content creation services to agribusinesses, in addition to just doing the trade media writing. And so with that, I worked with all kinds of companies, big and small. I've done part-time contract work for big international companies. I've done things for startups and mid-sized companies who maybe just don't have the band. We have communications and content related for it. So a lot of the stuff I do is on the B2B side. It's a lot of companies or publications that are speaking to farmers or agriculture, agribusiness industry stakeholders. But I also do have some that are more on the consumer facing side, especially when I'm doing websites and things of that nature.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the introduction, Jacqueline. You're doing great work. Just starting off with some of the stuff that you have mentioned in your LinkedIn bio, I would say. You have mentioned that passion is the driving force of our food and agriculture industry, right? And we have also been seeing that, of course, that growing food for the communities and supporting them always require passion at the back, right? So can you elaborate on what the passion actually means to you personally and how it translates into the work you do with the Herdbook Ag Media?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think especially more so with social media now, the passion is a two-way street. We have most of the people that I find that work in agriculture are in this space because they really love it. Whether they are producers themselves or they're on the academic side or they're even just working for the industry or on the politics side, they really do love the work that they do. But also I feel now we're also seeing more of the consumer end as well. As more consumers are voiced, they do have strong emotions and thoughts and ideas towards their food and how it is produced. And sometimes, usually that's a very positive thing. Sometimes it can have some negative side effects. And I think it's important to highlight because food is something people should be passionate about and have strong feelings towards. It's something all of us as human beings have in common. It's something that affects our day-to-day lives. And it is one of those common grounds that we all kind of have. And it's then in the world we live in today, it's just become such a big, complicated topic because so much that we've done to grow our food industry. We are spending less money on food than in generations past. We have more choice for food than ever before. And with both of those things, there's some trade-offs. And I feel that even if there are a lot of differences in opinions and differences in experience and thoughts, just the emotions and the passion that everyone shares for that is kind of a very unifying force. So I kind of bring that into the work that I do because that kind of is the foundation. Like the companies that I work with, the magazines I write for, everyone is eager to share their stories, and they're usually sharing it with audiences that share the same enthusiasm, and they just need the storytelling, the content, the writing, whatever media they're using to relay that story. They just need some help to make sure that message is articulated well. And so that's where myself, or even contractors like me who are in the ag space, can help that gap. And one of the nice things about it is when you're working with someone who knows the space, who understands both the consumer and producer end, that passion and enthusiasm is really able to shine through in whatever message you're sending out.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with the points you have made, and just to add here that about the fact that the industry really, and in fact the people in general are now very curious about where is the food coming from, right? And that really sprouts up the need for having tools that can provide traceability of where the food is coming from, right? For the farmers, it's very important. For the cooperatives that are buying from those farmers, it's very important that they know that where the food is being produced from, what are the practices that were applied to it, and that all combines into that traceability aspect. And I was just interviewing one of the other leaders from this industry. I think he was from South Africa, I believe, and he was someone very knowledgeable about the coffee industry. And then he mentioned that people are very curious to know about where their coffee is coming from, and that really inspires investors to invest in coffee growing regions such as South Africa, because that's one of the biggest regions. So it really just reminded me of that interview. So interesting. Yeah, so Jacqueline, coming on to the second point that you mentioned about your experience in the industry itself, and how it makes it easier for you to communicate and speak to both professionals and consumers using jargons that are really tailored for the agriculture industry. So you must have counted some challenges in translating complex agricultural topics for a general audience, right? So how do you and your team overcome that? Does the experience within agriculture all it takes, or what else are some of the factors that you and your team take care of to translate that in a way that people can easily understand?
Yeah, I think communications is one of those realms where there's a lot more to it than people think. And I feel communications or content creation in general has been thrown around a lot lately as we've become more of a digitized society, and it's been a college major here in the US quite a bit. So some people don't know what it means, or they assume they know what it means, and they don't always think there's a lot of value in it. But when I am talking to clients and potential clients, and I explain specifically what I do, it clicks with them right away, and they understand the work me and the team that helps me are able to do for them, because everyone in some capacity is speaking to whether it's their customer base, or if they're a nonprofit or an industry ag organization, or taking stances on topics and sharing awareness, that type of thing as well. And there is definitely a lot of skill and refinement that goes into it. There's I've always been a very strong writer. It's always been something I've enjoyed and comes very naturally to me. I encounter a lot of people in the work that I do who that is very much not their experience. They would know where to start. And then when you also get into things like website copy and SEO and press releases, those all require different types of skill sets. Some of it is a little bit of education and personal research, but a lot of it does come with experience, which is some companies do enjoy working with contractors, because you don't have to teach someone else or hope someone else in your company has the bandwidth to learn it. Even if it might cost a little bit more per diem or per hour when you're working with a contractor, you also have a lot of headache you don't need to worry about. This is someone who's hasn't just learned it, they done it consistently, so it can just be offhanded and you don't need to think about it again. Another thing too is obviously we're changing a lot with our digital landscape. A lot of times I've worked with clients too, they want some of my expertise and background in, they might want to get in front of more publications, or they want to know how they can reach a certain audience on LinkedIn or help them network and develop messaging strategies and things like that. And those are things that are all very different. It really depends on your goals and what you want to do. And even for someone like me, I can be a bit of trial and error depending on the specific client. But I think one of the things that people really value when they're working with any sort of contractor is that they have that experience in the space and are able to do a lot of the heavy lifting for them, or they already know where to go. Great example is there's a lot of startups out there who are finally at the point they have enough funding that they're able to start pushing their message out there and getting in front of more people, but they have no idea where to send a press release to, or what type of publications are farmers reading, or where do people that are eating these protein products, where do they look to get their information. And that's kind of where the mixture of skill, experience, and a little bit of knowledge all helps. I mean, it's easier for people to access to learn things now with the internet, but it really does take a lot more to put all of those things together to have a successful campaign, or just a successful monthly content calendar, or whatever that might look like.
Sounds good. Jacqueline, so 2 or 3, I think, follow-up questions around the marketing aspect of what you have mentioned, because I also belong to the same sort of department, or you can say function. So I also work in the marketing space for this company, AgriERP, right? So first of all, I would like you to share some insights about where does these farmers really consume the content, and obviously depending on your client, what their needs are and what's their target audience. But I'm assuming that majority of them would be farmers. So if you're targeting, you're communicating and penetrating the messaging of one of your client, so how do you go about selecting which channels to target and how to reach that target audience? And then secondly, we have all been seeing the impacts of AI, right? AI, especially in marketing, and especially in the way that Google works now. And there is this AI overview, and then digital landscape is really transforming on how people really navigate through search engines and go through information. So are you experiencing any challenges, any differences in that regard, of how your content is performing on Google, how your content is, making your client findable, or what's the word, discoverable on the internet?
Yeah. Well, I think there's I'll start with kind of the first question first, as far as where to reach people in agriculture. That's mostly farms, but I like to remind people a lot of times it also includes stakeholders, or just industry professionals, which includes academics, sales reps, people running companies, things of that nature. We're at a really interesting point in our agrarian history, I guess you could say, where we have multiple generations involved in farm or business at the same time. And that's just because people are not only living longer, but they're able to get the health care they need to still be in business for a longer period of life, instead of just retiring when you maybe started having some health issues. Now if they want to be involved longer, they can. So we're seeing multiple generations that are caring about the same things, but the way they maybe get content is a little different. So with that being said, there definitely is a not insignificant portion of the ag community that does prefer hard copy and localized sources of news information. So that could be print forms of media, radio is another big one, or information even that they just get from their local farm bureau or local extension office or land grant university or whatever it is. There are those kinds of places to reach them that are maybe a little bit more traditional, if you want to use that word, but that's still a very powerful thing in agriculture, and I definitely don't see that changing anytime soon. I think it really is a testament that you look through our 100 200-ish period of when, at least here in the U.S., agriculture media has been around, and we're still printing publications alongside digital outreaches. So I think that's going to be here to stay, at least for the rest of my lifetime and probably the next generation or two that comes after. Now, when it comes to other younger millennials, Gen Xer, or Gen Zers, and etc. that are still involved on farm, those people have grown up with the technology, and they are still getting a lot of information off of social media. Like, if you look at even the mainstream statistics, the number of people, I mean, myself included, that primarily get their news information from social media is massive. You know, I think we're even getting to an era where there's not even that many families that routinely like watch the evening news together anymore. That used to be like a staple for a lot of farm families, and I feel like even that now, with there being so many other ways to get televised information, it's not even becoming as common to tune into your local news network anymore. And so with those people, it is really important to be proactive on social media, or building email lists. That's a really big thing that we see. Press releases are a little bit of a murky area. There's some debate as to if it's still effective to use news wires or not, but there's still different modes of getting that information out there. Now, the second part of your question too, about like, you know, the struggles that I faced or that I've noticed, a big one that comes to mind there's two big ones. The one, of course, is posting more frequently. That's something where I can do it for my clients better than I can do for my own business, because time is, especially as you get older and you're raising a family and things like that, you realize how valuable of a resource your time is and how limiting it can be. And I think that includes for companies as well. If you really don't have a full-time person on staff to dedicate specifically to your content, your website, your social media, it is really challenging to keep up on that. And that's the only way you can really, now obviously not everyone wants to do that with the same frequency or intensity, but every time you post something, your whole audience doesn't see it, so you kind of do have to repeat yourself somewhat frequently. And then with that also comes discoverability, like you said, with search engine optimization or SEO. I do a lot of like foundational web copies for sites, whether I'm subtracting for someone else or someone comes to me directly. And the issue, and I can do a pretty good job just even with the writing. Obviously, web developers and people out of my wheelhouse are the ones who do the behind the scenes things to help things rank higher. But that also comes back to the frequency, because it's very difficult, because Google prioritizes Facebook pages, websites, things like that are active. So a lot of people forget, you know, you can't just throw some words at the wall and hope it'll like stay up there forever. You do really need to be competitive to show that you're active in maintaining that frequency, which obviously takes energy, it takes time, but that I think is going to become more relevant as we move along.
Yeah, and Jacqueline, what about the latest changes in the search trends that I was talking about? That with AI, all of this information that we are putting out there is really becoming very discoverable, right through the LLM, right? You don't need to go to the website and look up, you know, what the brand is saying about it. You just can look about it on the AI overview, and then just mind your business. If you're not interested, you're not coming to the website.
Yep. Yeah, and I think
Right.
too, I did want to mention, you mentioned with AI becoming more powerful as well. I've heard that's going to be the next big thing that people are going to be going after, is learning how do you rank in the AI engines when someone just types in something to ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or whatever they're using. There's it's a whole other set of skills, learning how to stay relevant on that. So it's never ending, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. So just a few other questions about your experiences, or if you have any anecdotes to share about that. Maybe if you have a client who had such a requirement, and you learn from that, that what are some of the trends that you are seeing within the agriculture industry in terms of technology and the adoption of technology, and how technology in a broader sense is revolutionizing agriculture, because we have been seeing a lot of this trend that people are inquiring about software, adopting a lot of technology of all kinds, right? There are drones, AI driven applications, softwares. So maybe an experience that you have had with a client who was providing such a solutions or technology, and then how was the adoption and how is the trend you're seeing in that regard?
Yeah, I feel like what we've historically said in agriculture in the recent decades is, well, more than the recent decades, arguably for quite some time, is that it is somewhat hard to farmers, producers to adopt new ideas, because our industry does tend to get very comfortable with the way things are done. But also there's an emotional attachment, right? A lot of people farm with their dad, or their dad taught them, or their grandpa taught them how to do this, and they tend to go with that. And so there's some hesitancy. But eventually people do adopt and change, even if there is some moaning and groaning. And it's not necessarily it's right or it's wrong. That's just how things are in general. But even though we've said that for a long time, I feel these next generations that are now coming to take over farms or go on to start companies or work for agribusinesses are going to be more open-minded and more fluid, because they've grown up in a culture and environment that has been much more open to change and progress, whatever that looks like. And so I think that's going to translate to them being open. And already we're seeing it. Biologicals, just for example, has been picking up a lot recently. I feel like before, anything that was organic and more naturally based was met with more skepticism, and that's not entirely unjustified, because there wasn't as many products out there, and maybe there wasn't as much knowledge or research and education. We're now seeing more companies with more dollars getting into this space and testing products and proving their efficacy and getting more farmers on board to use them. So now a lot of biological products aren't just associated with organic or regenerative anymore. We're seeing more conventional people adopt them, and more companies too, even conventional companies, are adding their portfolios with products like this. We're also seeing more integration of various types of AI and software and still hardware, and by that I'm talking things like camera vision to track livestock or monitor crop fields and applications. We're seeing more like wireless fencing systems that are data collecting and involve hardware and AI, and so many things, just kind of that. And I could go on and on listing off the different things, but I think that is what it is at the end of the day, is companies are creating more products that can handle massive amounts of data, and they have very sophisticated software, and they also are married with some hardware component. And I think that's really noteworthy, because I feel a lot of our software in agriculture has traditionally been very outdated or been slower to get stuff updated, and now we're seeing a lot more companies being very good about updating software and their databases, or their ability to store data and things like that, and then using some type of AI system to help producers make better decisions with that information, and to go from there. So those are the things that come to mind for me that we're seeing right now. And again, I think within the next decade or two, some of the former resistance that we've had to these being adopted are going to really not be as much of a concern as they once were. And I will add too, though, there still is that element of, you don't want to over fatigue your audience too. I do feel that sometimes people do get tired of seeing buzzwords like innovative or revolutionary or disruptive technology, especially in the agriculture space. I think companies sometimes jump the gun on that and don't necessarily do a good job of communicating why farmers should care or why they're so great or whatever. Um, and I think that's also going to reach an equilibrium where companies that aren't successful or maybe are just taking up an overly saturated space will go away more, and we'll just see those few outstanding ones stay, and they'll evolve over time.
Yeah, I'll just second that point you just made about the technology that they have had in the farms being very outdated, because since we are also one of the software providers, and the solution that we provide is a centralized platform for farm management. The entire agri value chain is connected through our software. It's like the centerpiece of the farm, right? The financial backbone and the all operational backbone is the software. So what we have been observing is that the people that we are trying to modernize and replace their existing systems have been using either Excel sheets or like documenting their stuff on papers, or they had software solutions that were built in 1980s, right? So that's very outdated processes that have been in process for very massive farms as well. So and we have seen that they are very open to modernizing their farms now, and then going to the cloud and adopting latest technologies, latest ERPs, SAP, Microsoft, Oracle. So there is increasing adoption. I think that also validates the fact that the new generation is taking over, and then they are very inclined towards technology and adopting that. So I think, yeah, so Jacqueline, it was a pleasure speaking to you and hearing your perspective. I am done with the questions. I would like you to like share some closing remarks for our audience, and whatever you feel like want to communicate to the audience, to the farmers, to the B2B buyers and the companies about agriculture or anything.
Yeah, well, again, I appreciate the time and always happy to chat about this kind of stuff. I think I will say that, as always, but especially now, it is a really exciting time to be involved in food and agriculture. And one thing that I do really like about this is that, our industry has shown so much growth and change that there's so many ways people can be involved in this space now. There's more varying types of job opportunities, and there's more ways for people to get involved without having the typical background of growing up on a farm or growing up in the industry. And I know that comes with growing pains, but I personally really enjoy seeing that, because with that comes fresh ideas, new places to go. I think that's really going to benefit us moving forward. But for me, as a communicator and things like that, it is so important to get your messaging right. And I really hope that as we get more data, more technologies, and more become more social media savvy as a culture, we'll be able to seamlessly integrate that with our food production.
Jacqueline, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your passion, and the incredible work that you're doing with the Herdbook Ag Media. I wish you the best of luck, and stay connected. Maybe we need your services soon.